Yet another year has come and gone. With that year has come very many obstacles for me. One of them was reading 100 books. And I'm here to tell you that, ladies and gentlemen, we did it. We completed that. I read 100 books this year. I am so proud of myself for that. You do not even know how stressful having a 100 book reading goal has been. I can't even put into words how stressful it has been. But nonetheless, since reading 100 books, I have had quite a decently good reading year, I would say. Honestly, I think that I really focused on quantity over quality when it came to books this year. Nonetheless, here we are. We've got some books. So let's go ahead and let's jump right into all of the books that were my top books and some of my favorites of the year. So this first set of books is not going to be in any particular order. These were books that were really good, but were not like my top books of the year, but they were still fun and I still wanted to include them because I did really enjoy them. So first we're starting off with A Dark and Secret Magic by Wallace Kinney. This book came out in October and honestly it kind of took my world by storm in October. This was definitely my favorite read in October. It has all the spooky, whimsical, magical vibes that you would need in a witchy book, but also while this is a cozy fantasy, it still includes some strong plot. So pretty much we are following our main character Hecate. It's getting close to her birthday and this is a very important time for her as a witch. She pretty much has been always told that she is supposed to be this hedge witch. She takes care of people and she provides people her home when in need. At the very beginning of the book, she has a dream that someone else in her coven is talking to her about her past and about how she needs to look into it more. When she wakes up, she realizes that this person actually passed who was talking to her in her dream. So now she's even more intrigued about what this person meant when they were talking to her about her past. And then also this guy shows up and his name is Matthew. And Matthew just kind of flips her world upside down. I believe that they were in like rival covens, so she really did not want to let him in to her house. He said that he needed some type of place of salvation, and so she was like, okay, fine, here you go, welcome in. This book was so fun and perfect for October. It has all the beautiful, magical, witchy elements in it, and it is 100% one of my favorite books of this year. It was emotional, it was beautiful, and it was so well crafted, and it was just so perfect for the spooky season. Then next up, I did want to mention Assistant to the Villain. This was another fun one that I read a little bit later in the year. This book is so hilarious. It is a fantasy book, but it honestly feels just like so much more than it just being a fantasy book, which is hilarious to say because while this book, you know, had a pretty standard plot, was hilarious and it really built on the fact that it was trying to make fun of itself in being so stereotypical. This book we are following Evie, and Evie is looking for a place of employment and she stumbles into this villain. He is supposed to be ruthless and all of that, but Evie is a very like sweet, wholesome girl, and she is just so funny when it comes to comparing her to this villain. They really do take on those grumpy sunshine roles and they portray them in the cheesiest but most hilarious way ever. While it is being so hilarious and fun, it also feels so whimsical and it feels like like you're reading a fairy tale. So this was so good, and I need to continue this series in 2025 because I had so much fun with this series. It was just a good time. It was a book that made you laugh out loud, and it was so good. Then next up we have a book that you really can't see the cover. Let me hold it over here out of the light. This is Picking Daisies on Sunday. This was very sweet. It was so sweet. This was a just very sweet and heartwarming romance following our main character, Daniela. She was such a fun character to follow. We pick up with Daniela, and it's many years down the line, and she finds herself in a fake relationship with a guy who used to be not only her best friend, but the guy she was utterly in love with. They have to fake date for this wedding, but there is so much more to that. It is friends to strangers to friends to lovers again. It was just so heartwarming and precious. It's honestly insane how full circle this book is. I'm not gonna go into that, how it's full circle, because that would be spoilers, but if you know, you know. And the crazy plot twist that is in this book about this book is insane. Not only that, but it was such a sweet story, and this, I believe, was the only romance that I gave a 5-star this year. There was just so much about it that was just so pure and sweet and warm and fuzzy. When I picked this book up, I did not want to put this book down. This was the first romance in a long time where I felt super duper giddy. Like it was a warm hug, and I love this so much. This is honestly going to be a romance that I want to pick up again in 2025, just simply because I want to reread it and I want to annotate it. The guy in this is also just so sweet. I love this. This was really good. Next up, we have Powerful. This was the novella in the Powerless series. This novella follows Adina and Adina's story. So this book kind of takes place about 1/4 of the way through Powerless, all the way up until the very end. And this story was heartbreaking. Adina, I love you so much. It's honestly a beautiful tragedy. That's how I would describe this book. It is very beautiful, but a very tragic story. So we just kind of get to follow Adina, learn a little bit more about her and Peyton's relationship, and also see what Adina gets up to while Peyton is off at the trials. And if you have read the very ending of Powerless and you've not read this, prepare yourself. This hurt my soul. This put my soul together, then broke it. And that's all I'll say. Then next up, we have 6 Crimson Cranes. This book is by Elizabeth Lim, and let me tell you something. If you're looking for a whimsical fantasy story, this is it. This is it. It very much reminds me of a Ghibli movie just by the way it is told and the writing and whimsy in here. I was so obsessed when I read this. So this is following our main character, Shori. Shori kind of has like this forbidden magic running through her, and then one day she catches the attention of her stepmother. Her stepmother is just really like vicious towards Shori. She pretty much curses Shori and curses Shori's entire family. Not only does Shori end up with like this bowl on her head and nobody recognizes her, she's also a princess. I probably should say that. She's also a princess. Not only does that all happen to her, but also her siblings, her brothers, all get turned into cranes. Shori has to pretty much go on this adventure to save her brothers and to undo this mess that Shori has gotten herself into. And not only does she really mature throughout this story, she meets some really fun and interesting friends. There's a little bit of a romance in here. This is a duology. The second book, unfortunately, really didn't make it to my top books of 2024 just because I really didn't love it as much as I love this one. But the ending is so heartbreaking and I'm so sad about it. This book was so good. It was so fun. I loved my time with it. I really took my time while I read this book earlier this year, and it was just perfect. It was all sorts of perfect, and I could not recommend it enough if you are looking for just a very whimsical, adventure-esque story. that's this. Then we read Funny Story by Emily Henry. This was such a good time as well. This was my first encounter with Emily Henry. I'd never read an Emily Henry book before this, and let me tell you something, I understand the hype now. I really didn't understand it before because I was just like, you know, she's another romance author. Yeah, who cares? But this made me understand why people are so obsessed with Emily Henry and what Emily Henry writes. So this one, we are following our main character Daphne, and Daphne is getting ready to get married until she's not. Pretty much what happens is Daphne's ex starts dating and falling in love with, I believe his name is Max. No, Miles. Falling in love with Miles's girlfriend. So they all end up breaking up, and then Daphne ends up moving in with Miles, forms a connection with Miles, but again, it is so much more than that. It talks about so many important things, and honestly, this book, while I do really say that it reminds me of New Girl, it's not really the same situation, but just kind of the vibes remind me of New Girl. So if you like New Girl, I would definitely recommend giving this book a try. Miles is also definitely a very different male main character. It was really interesting to see myself at the beginning of the book not really loving Miles just because he was very rugged and just not really a fun person to be around, to then the end just seeing him, you know, him and Daphne's relationship blossom and things like that. And they also do end up fake dating to kind of make their exes jealous, and it's just a really funny situation, hence why it's called Funny Story. It really is quite a funny story of how their relationship gets started. Emily Henry, you are one of my new favorite authors, and I cannot wait to read more of Emily Henry's work in 2025. Next up, we have The Wishing Game. This book was so fun. I remember really enjoying this book, and this book honestly made me tear up quite a bit when I read it. So this book, we are following our main character, Lucy Hart. Lucy fell in love with this story when she was younger, and she passed this series that she loved down to this orphan boy named Christopher. She wants to adopt Christopher. While Lucy really wants to adopt him, it is very expensive, and unfortunately they are turning her down every single time she goes to talk about adopting him. They're turning her down because she can't afford it. So because her and Christopher share this love for this story, well, this book series, it's called Clock Island. While they share this love for this series, something a little bit mysterious happens, and the author pretty much quit writing this series. We find that the author many years later is releasing the final book in the Clock Island series, but he's doing it in a very interesting way. He wants to create this game where whoever wins will win this final book. I believe it was just like the final draft of this book. It had never been turned over to his publisher. So Lucy gets it in her brain that, oh my god, if I give this to a publisher, they are going to pay me so much money and I can finally adopt Christopher. And so she embarks on this journey and participating in this game to win this either manuscript, final draft, something like that. This book was very heartwarming, but also made me tear up so many times because it was so sweet, but it was also just so hard watching Lucy go through such a hard time with trying to adopt Christopher and then getting turned down. It really felt very real, and that I think is what I really enjoyed about this book, is it felt very real, but it also really like pulled that and put it into like there is still magical things that can happen to you. Even if you're struggling or going through a really tough time, you really just need to believe in magic, like if you were a kid. It was so precious. Honestly, Meg Schaefer, another one of my favorite authors of the year. I need to read more of Meg Schaefer's work, but this book was so good. And I would recommend this to anybody, especially if you are just wanting a beautifully crafted, I should say, book with a very like hopeful and deep meaning, but still trying to keep it as light, as possible. Then next up we have the Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. This was another one of those books where I was just absolutely blown away. This is another cozy fantasy, and honestly I cannot believe how many cozy fantasies made it to this list, because normally I'm not a cozy fantasy person because I find cozy fantasy to be boring. So in this series we are following Keela, and Keela has always just kind of been a very keep to herself person. She really doesn't like branch out and talk to people. She's kind of always just kept herself company, her and her spider plant. He's something else. He talks and all the fun stuff. His name is also Kaz. One day though, unfortunately, this library does burn down, and Keela and Kaz lived in this library, so they eventually had to leave and they had to find somewhere else to live. So Keela moves back to a childhood home. She moves back to this island that she hasn't been to in a very long time. She just really tries to figure out how to find her place in this society. She's very, at first, just very shy and very kind of standoffish and not really sure what to do. But then, you know, you see her just learn how to make her way in the world. And also, we do get to follow a bit of a love story in here as well, which is so wholesome. But also, I should mention that Keela does open up a spell shop. She covers it up by marketing it as a jam shop because magic's illegal in this world. This book was so cozy and so sweet, and honestly it was so beautiful. I do believe that Sarah Beth Durst is coming out with another book in this series next year, and I cannot wait to read it. I'm so excited because this was just so good, and I was so blown away and surprised with how much I really ended up enjoying this book. And then before we get to the top books, I do have one more book that's not in my top list, but still in my top list, if that makes sense. And that is A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This book was honestly, again, it blew me away. I was so impressed with this magic series and how V.E. Schwab built this world. I've always kind of known, well, I've heard that V.E. Schwab is a fantastic writer, and this book just really proved that to me. And honestly, I really need to read more V.E. Schwab in the new year as well, because I was just so blown away with this. So in this, we are following Kel. Kel can travel between all of these different Londons. There's Red London, Grey London, Black London, and White London. Also, I should mention as well that out of those 4 Londons, one of them fell. That was Black London. Something happens and he pretty much has to make his way to Black London, and along the way he meets this very, very spunky girl named Delilah or Lila. They are just so cute. I was obsessed. The battle scenes in here were amazing. The craftsmanship of the world, beautiful. The very minimal but very prevalent love story was amazing. And I need to finish this series. I have not read another book in this series since I read this one, but I need to finish it because I just really loved everything about this. I gave this book a 5-star as well. It was so good. It was fun. I had a great time. I will admit that the first little bit of this book was really slow, and it did take me a minute to get through it. But once I was in it, I was committed, and I just needed to know what this book was about, and I needed to see if Lila and Kel completed their mission through all of these Londons. We're now getting into my top 5 book series, top 5 books / book series of 2024. And the first book that I'm going to talk about is Akawar, A Court of Wings and Ruin. Are you actually kidding? This was so good. This was a beautiful conclusion to the original trilogy. I was so obsessed. I really can't go into what this book was about at all, just because this is a 3rd book in a series and so much goes down, so much gets resolved. There's so many tears that can be shed in this book. I really enjoyed it. What I really loved about this book though is I was really worried about this going in because I I had heard so many people say that this book was about the war that was going on in this world and there really wasn't anything else. I think that there was quite a bit in this book that went on that involved like the characters and kind of seeing them grow. Just so many good things about like learning about the characters and things like that went on, and we really got to see like the characters just really bond, come together. We got to see some things amended. We got to see some characters just really come out of their shell. We got to really get some good banter in here, even in the like dark times that this book provided. We just got so much content. It really set up not only a good ending for the original trilogy, which just focused on Feyre's story, to then expanding on this world and creating books 4 and 5, which are the 2 other books that are out in the series currently. I'm so ready for Sarah J Maas to make another ACOTAR book. I need it. I need to know. I want to see these characters continue to grow. This, however, was not a 6-star read. It was just a 5-star. Nothing will ever top ACOMAF in this series, I fear, but I still loved it and I still had such a good time with this book. This book was tied, I should mention that as well. This book was tied for the number 5 spot on my list, and it was tied with Reckless. This is the second book in the Powerless trilogy. Reckless was really good. I'm not gonna lie, if I would not have adjusted my expectations for this book very last minute, might I add, then I would not have liked it. So this book really focused more on the characters and building their relationship than any kind of world building. Honestly, I know a lot of people did not like Reckless, and rightfully so. I mean, Powerless, it really had everything. It had world building, it had character building, it had a plot to keep you interested, but this book really just kind of slowed down and really focused on building that character dynamic between Peyton and Kai, and we just learn more about them and about their struggles. So with that being said, I still gave this book a 5-star. I still really enjoyed this book. I still had such a fun time with it. While it's not Powerless, while nothing in this series will probably ever be Powerless, I was still so intrigued with learning more about these characters and just building a deeper bond with them. I got to see Peyton and Kai again. How could you not love this book? I think that if you are a fan of the characters in this story, you will still really love this book, even though it's not really plot based. Taking the number 4 spot in my top books of 2024 is The Crimson Moth. Honestly, who's surprised? Who's shocked? Not me. This was such a fun read. This book kind of took over my life for like a hot minute, and it was just the first book in the series. Phenomenal. So this one, we are following our main character, Rune, and Rune is, I like to describe this book as Rune being a socialite by day and the Crimson Moth by night. As the Crimson Moth, she is freeing these witches because this was during the witch trials, so she is trying to go back in and save these witches from, you know, getting killed. She does it as the Crimson Moth, but no one knows that she is the Crimson Moth. So by day, she's this socialite. She goes to parties. It really feels very, I would say this book feels more Regency. I really loved seeing Rune and seeing the Crimson Moth, and I really loved seeing her use Gideon. Pretty much the plot of this story is that she needs some information about a certain witch. So she decides to use Gideon. He's like, I don't really remember, maybe like a general or something. He's really high ranking in the people that are taking the witches and imprisoning them and things like that. So she decides to kind of infiltrate him, just use him for knowledge. It was a good time. The Crimson Moth is so good, and to anybody out there that has not read it, you need to read it before Rebel Witch comes out in February, I think, maybe March. But I'm so excited for the second book because this book leaves off on such a horrendous cliffhanger and I just need to know. But my only complaint about this book, and I will bring this up forever until Kristen Cicerelli decides to bless us with a super heavy Crimson Moth scene, I will complain about this forever. We needed more as her as the Crimson Moth. We needed more scenes with Rune as the Crimson Moth. I will stand on that hill forever. We needed more. I wanted to see more of her being this superhero-esque witch, because how cool of a concept. Next up, coming in at number 3, this is my top series. Honestly, it's my top series because you couldn't really tell me to pick between these books in this series as to which book is going to be my top book. I love them all and I really couldn't pick just one. First of all, this should not come as a shock to anybody because I do gush about this series a bit, and that is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I love this series. It was so cute and it was just so whimsical. It was whimsical in a way. It didn't really need to be fairy tale-ish. It was still pretty much like academia focused, but the way that Heather Fawcett just crafted this book, this series, it has been impeccable. I love the fact that this series is told as if we were reading Emily's diary. That made it feel like such a deeper connection, and I feel as though we got really of a connection with not only Emily but Bramblebee as well. I love them so much. In this book we are following Emily Wilde. Emily is a professor and she has one mission, and that is to write an encyclopedia for fairies. She embarks on this journey to this unknown land to her to study these fairies and to get up close and personal with them. While it is, again, cozy, it really takes you on a wild ride with Emily. And then enter Wendell Bramblebee. He is just something else. This man and his wit, 10 out of 10. I love him. He honestly is probably in my top list of book boyfriends. He's so precious and so ruthless all at the same time. Just the plot twist that involves him, absolutely wild. This book is insane. These books are insane, and the way that they are so beautiful and they are so well crafted, it just blows me away every single time. I cannot wait for the third book. I have high hopes for the third book and I need to have the series resolved. I need to see how it ends. I need to know more specifically what's going to happen with Wendell and Emily. And then coming in at number 2 is the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, but I did not read Once Upon a Broken Heart in 2024. I read it in 2023. So I'm going to be focusing on The Ballad of Never After and A Curse for True Love. More specifically, The Ballad of Never After, but I'm including The Curse for True Love just because it was a very fun ending for this series, and despite popular belief, I did really enjoy this book. There is one reason, and one reason alone, why I love this series, and his name is Jax. That's it. Period. The end. I really feel as though I could say that and that would sum up the entire series for me. This we are following Evangeline, and Evangeline in the first book wants to stop this wedding. She decides to make a deal with this fake named Jax. I don't know if you've heard of him or not, but he's kind of cool. He's a little bit backwards and a little bit kooky, but that's okay because he really sets her up for a wild ride. Let me be the first person to tell you, this story is a wild ride. I would read this book. I would read this series a billion times over. I'm planning on doing a reread of this series next year as well, just because all of my excitement, I should say, is built on one line in this book. That's it. One line. One line has got me tore all to pieces over this series. I don't even know. I don't even know You know, I don't know. This is whimsical. This is beautiful. And while this series tore me all to pieces, and I was, you know, I read half of this book and this whole book in one night. Yeah, I'm a little wild for that, I know. I just don't know what to say about it. I loved it. It was so fun. If you're looking again for a whimsical time, I think there's a theme going on in this video, and the theme is whimsy. If you're looking for a whimsical time and a fun time with some fun characters, here you go. Here it is. I love this series. Top series. Second top series of the year. Hands down. We have finally made it. We have finally made it, ladies and gentlemen, to the top book series of the year. And if you've been following me since the beginning of the year, you may already have a guess, because I'll never shut up about this series. The Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare. I'm so late to this. I'm so late. I know. You don't even have to tell me about how late I am to this series. I already know. But, you know, it's better late than never, because I don't even know what to say. Could I tell you what the plot of this series is? Absolutely not. But could I tell you why I love this series? Absolutely. And that is because there are 3 characters in this series that we mainly follow, and that is Tessa, Will, and Jim. And that's all you need to know. I mean, to be quite frank with you, the plot of this series is not really my favorite. I mean, it's not bad. It's good. What really like drives this is the found family. It really is. Just these characters. I read this series over a span of quite a few months. I think I started this series at the very beginning of 2024, and I finished it, I believe, in August. I kind of consumed this series over the course of almost the entire year. The only reason that happened was because I was very, very, very afraid to read the 3rd book, and rightfully so. I mean, I think that was valid. I could try to give you a synopsis on this series. Clockwork Angel is my least favorite book in this series. I think my ratings would be Clockwork Princess is number 1, Clockwork Prince is number 2, and then Clockwork Angel is number 1. No, is number 3. We're following our main character, Tessa Gray, and Tessa is magical. She is pretty much being held captive by, I believe it's the Night Sisters. I believe that's their names. No, it's the Dark Sisters. Okay, so she's kidnapped by the Dark Sisters. One day, these 2 wonderful men, Will and Jim, go to break her out. She kind of gets put into this shadow hunter world, and she gets introduced to the shadow hunters and just kind of how they operate, and also she wants to find her brother. That's really the best synopsis I can give you. The characters really drove this whole series home for me, and I mean, specifically the last 2 books are what made the series for me. This book was so heartbreaking in its own way, but it was nowhere near as heartbreaking as Clockwork Princess. Clockwork Princess, specifically the epilogue. No, honestly, the whole darn book is just so sad. While there's a lot going on in here with the romance and things like that, you really just grow so attached to every character that is in this book, and you want to know, and you want them to have everything resolved. You want them to be happy. That is all you'll end up wanting for them. This was my top series of the year. Nothing could have topped this for me this year. I'm dumbfounded when it comes to this series. Honestly, truly, this was such a good time. Again, Katie, thanks, but should probably send you my bill for therapy with this one, because oh my god, I really wish I would have read those books a lot sooner. This is my last video that I'm filming in 2024. How insane! I don't even know how to express how crazy it is that 2024 is over. It literally feels like 2024 just started yesterday, and it feels like just yesterday that I was sitting and reading Clockwork Angel, being like, oh my god, I'm so excited to start this series. I'm so scared, but so excited. But alas, here we are, and it's completed. I want to also say a huge thank you to you guys. You guys have made my year impeccable. Starting my YouTube channel again, well, I didn't really technically start it again this year. I've actually kind of been doing it on and off for quite a bit now, but really focusing my time to YouTube, I think I started back in like May when I started like really focusing on YouTube and seeing you guys just join in on the party, putting up with me and keeping up with me and all of my shenanigans. Thank you. Thank you guys so much for an epic 2024, and I cannot wait to see where my YouTube channel goes in 2025. Guys, I do have some of my 2025 content planned, and I'm so excited to share that with you guys soon. Do give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Helps out the channel, makes my heart smile. You know how it be around here. Comment down below some of your guys' favorite series or books period of the year. I would love to hear what you guys are reading, what you guys have been reading, what were some of your guys' favorite books. You can even talk about your least favorite books if you wanted to. Floor's yours. Also, be sure to tap that subscribe button as well as that post notification bell. We do try to upload around here officially every Monday and Friday at 6 p.m. EST. No, I changed that. We're trying to upload around here every Monday and Friday, I think around 12 p.m. EST now, so a little bit earlier in the day. I hope that you guys find enjoyment in me changing up my uploading schedule just a little bit, because I really loved uploading on Sunday, but it was just starting to become a lot, and I felt like I really wasn't getting a break in between uploads because I was filming during the week. Sometimes it would overlap into the weekends, and then I would have to upload that same weekend, and it was just a bit too much. So we're trying something new, and I hope that you guys are enjoying it so far. I would say I would see you guys in 2025, but technically I'm already seeing you. It's already 2025 for you right now. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.